Move on. Welcome to Vintage Cars of Victoria. I'm Joey Scarfone. We're going to take a look at the city's exciting vintage car culture and some of the rarest and most beautiful vintage cars that live right here in Victoria. Stay tuned, I think you'll enjoy this. With us on the show today is Jim Colwill. Jim, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Joey. It's a pleasure to be here.
You have a very amazing collection of hood ornaments, but before we get into it, can you tell us something about your early days of collecting?
The mascots that I'm going to show you today date back to the beginning of my collecting time. And the place to start is with the Petty Girl. Petty Girl was designed by George Petty for the Nash Automobile Company and was introduced in 1953. This particular mascot was used through 3 years, 53, 54, and 55 on Nash cars, and it was the mascot that caught my attention as a teenager. George Petty was a pinup artist, much like George Varga, and his girls were really quite iconic for the time, the early 50s. This is where it all started.
This has a very Art Deco look to it.
Yes, it certainly carries through from the Art Deco era. I mean, the Art Deco era was a little bit earlier, but this streamlined, semi-stylized form is certainly a product that has carried through from the Deco period.
And you also have in your collection one of the most iconic hood ornaments, the Rolls Royce. Can you talk about that?
Well, the Rolls Royce is certainly one of the most recognized, and I guess you would say most iconic, of automotive mascots. It was designed for Rolls-Royce, specifically for Rolls-Royce cars, and you wouldn't use it on any other mark. It was designed by Charles Sykes, a very famous British artist, and he used Eleanor Vasco Thornton as his model. Eleanor Thornton was a busy girl. She was the secretary to Lord Montagu and his mistress as well. During the First World War, while on a trip to India, their boat was torpedoed in the Mediterranean. The boat was sunk and Eleanor lost her life, but Lord Montagu did manage to escape the waves and get back to England. So it's a immortalization of Eleanor Vasco Thornton as portrayed by Charles Sykes, and then to be used on the Rolls-Royce car, and is used right through to the present day, but in a more minute form on modern Rolls-Royce cars.
And I understand you also have a Bugatti hood ornament.
Yes, the Bugatti Type 41 was designed in 1926. There were only a few of these cars made, and probably even fewer of the Bugatti Elephant mascots. A bit earlier in time, designed by Ettore Bugatti's brother, Rembrandt Bugatti. Rembrandt Bugatti was an animaleur who worked and lived in London, England, working at the London Zoo, and his favorite animal was the elephant. He designed many different elephants. And this particular elephant is really a product of some of his earlier designs. He stopped designing in 1916 because in 1916 he committed suicide.
I understand there was some brotherly rivalry in their relationship.
I don't know just exactly how true this is because sometimes things get into legend, but it is said that his brother, his older brother Ettore, stole his girlfriend, and as a result he committed suicide.
Oh my gosh.
And it is a fact, I guess, that the brother did go on to marry the girl in question.
There always seems to be interesting history behind these ornaments. I'm always fascinated by the stories that surround them. Can we talk a bit about your American collections? Something from the pre-war era.
Well, the First World War was responsible for many different designs. At the commencement of the war, the Americans were very reluctant to come into the campaign. There was a very strong movement in America called the isolationist movement to resist any entry into the First World War. Their slogan was "America First," as on the lapel of Uncle Sam. And so if you were a member of the isolationist group and you wanted to make your thoughts known, you would buy a mascot such as this one, place it on your car, much as we, I suppose, might place a bumper sticker on a modern day car to champion a particular cause or idea. And so America First was the slogan for America Stay Out of the First World War. Of course, as time went along, the Americans did get drawn in, entered the war in 1917, and at that point, Uncle Sam became a symbol on the opposite side of the coin, as it were. That is, became a symbol for ultimate victory in the campaign of the First World War.
And I'm sorry, the American sentiment was changed somewhat, and this was also reflected in later ornaments, I believe.
By the end of the war, I guess everyone was sort of looking for a mascot that might be a memory piece to the First World War. And the British cartoonist, Bruce Bairnsfather, was probably the most famous cartoonist of the First World War, reporting from the front, and developed this character called Old Bill.
Old Bill.
And so Old Bill, the mustached Old Bill with the army helmet, really became the symbol of the termination of the First World War. This mascot came out in 1919, that is just after the First War was finished. Now, preceding Old Bill, there was a little bit of the opposite, the idea of a caricature. And of course, the American or the Allied side wanted to make fun of the German side. So in the early days, Kaiser Wilhelm II of Germany was characterized as a pig wearing a piccolobe and his famous mustache.
That helmet is recognizable. Can you show us something you have around the Art Nouveau era?
Well, certainly the Art Nouveau era was a very, very strong art form through the 20s and on into the 30s. And so here's a wonderful example of an Art Nouveau mascot. This is French, the rearing horse, on a very stylized radiator cap. And this radiator cap is a working rad cap. And so the cap plus the ornament above makes a wonderful Art Deco statement.
What kind of material would that be made from?
Well, the basic casting is brass or bronze, and then they are either silver plated or nickel plated or a combination of nickel silver alloy. This is a nickel silver alloy that is on this brass casting.
René Lalique produced some exquisite hood ornaments and mascots. Jim, can you tell us a little bit about Lalique?
Well, René Lalique was without a doubt one of the most famous of French designers. He designed many, many different things, but the glass mascots that went on radiator caps was without a doubt one of his very finest lines of work. This is the large dragonfly, one of about 29 different mascot designs that Lalique was responsible for. Lalique mascots in glass are dated prior to and after 1945. 1945 was the year of his death. And anything that prior to his death is marked R. Lalique. Items produced after his death are simply marked Lalique France. And so there's a huge difference in terms of monetary value as to whether the mascot is pre-45 or post-45. That might be one of the most important things that a collector could watch for. This large dragonfly is an R. Lalique That is, it's a pre-45 Mascot.
And I imagine being glass, if there are any chips on the hood ornament, that would affect the value at all. This one seems to be in quite good condition.
This one is in mint condition. It is free of chips, and that is really the only way to sensibly buy glass Mascots. Once there's even the smallest of chips, it goes down in value precipitously.
One of my favorite Mascots in Jim's collection is the quick sail airplane. Can you explain this, Jim, and how it works?
This is an English Mascot, and it's a very special one in that it goes beyond just the decorative idea. In other words, it does something as well as look interesting. You may notice that the wings on the aircraft are contoured just like a regular aircraft, in such a way that there will be an airflow over the top and a turbulence underneath. That's the so-called Bernoulli principle, and it's what gives lift to any aircraft. This is no different. At 17 miles an hour, traveling down the road, there is sufficient lift under the wings that this will rise up and travel in the air until the speed goes below 17 and it will settle back down.
That's amazing. Are there any Mascots that relate to famous personalities, Jim?
Yes, there are. Not one that would relate to myself, but this one relates to Rudolph Valentino.
The famous actor.
Yeah, the famous silent screen actor of the early 1920s. In 1925, he starred in a film called The Cobra. And that film caught his attention to the Cobra with the idea of it becoming a mascot to his collection of cars. And so he had a number of Cobras made, nobody knows the exact number, a number of Cobras made to adorn the radiator cap of his Isotta Fraschini's in his car collection.
Some of the Mascots are known for their functionality. Can you talk about this one, Jim?
This is a good example of a functioning Mascot, a Mascot that goes beyond the decorative only. This is an English Mascot called the Eastbourne Lighthouse, patterned after an actual lighthouse on the Cornish coast. The Mascot, it functions in two ways. It has a thermometer in the back, which registers temperature from the radiator below, and the light in the lighthouse is connected through the brake circuit. So when the driver applies the brakes, the light in the lighthouse goes on as well as the brake light. But if there's a burned out bulb, for instance, in the brake, then this light won't go on. So it's a check, if you might. So two functions, the third function being decorative in its own right.
This Mascot we're looking at has some very mythological themes going on.
Yes, indeed, Joey, it does. This is a French Mascot, and it's based on Greek mythology, Zeus being the major actor in Greek mythology. Zeus took a liking to the nymph Aegina and decided that he would come down to Earth and carry her off for whatever he had in mind. So he transferred himself into an eagle, came down and picked up Aegina by the handles, and away he went. And whatever he did, I will leave to your imagination.
There is a difference between hood ornaments and Mascots. Can you clarify that for us, Jim?
Well, there is a difference, and there isn't a difference. Up until 1933, the radiator filler was external to the hood. And so a radiator cap would be external, it would be filled externally, and any ornamentation on the top would be referred to, or was referred to, as an automotive Mascot. Around 1933 or 34, depending on the automobile involved, the radiator filler was placed under the hood. And so there was no longer an external perch for the ornamentation to be attached to. The ornamentation was then fitted to the contour of the hood, much as you would see in this particular Mascot. So from 1933, roughly 33 onward, the Automotive Mascot became known as a hood ornament. But in truth, a hood ornament and an Automotive Mascot are really one and the same thing.
The value of hood ornaments is not always estimated in dollars, and I'm trying to figure out which one of these is the most expensive. Jim, can you give me a clue and I will try and guess?
The ornaments that you're looking at date to 1933. These ornaments are from the 1933 Cadillac. In 1933, Cadillac offered 3 engine options: a V8, a V12, and a V16. And it was common at that time to indicate the engine under the hood by the decoration on the hood or the ornament involved. So this ornament was used on the V12 and the V16 models, and this ornament was used on the V8. At that time, there were relatively few V8s produced compared to the number of V12s and V16s. Which of these ornaments, Joey, do you think is the more valuable?
Well, this one looks like the original model is much more intricate and it looks much shinier. So I'm guessing this one would be worth more.
No, it's not. This is the more valuable of the 2 ornaments. And this comes back to the idea of rarity. Collectors are very, very conscious of the rare factor. And because there were very few V8 cars produced, in fact there were only 2,000 of them made in the first place, this is a rare ornament. There were many, many more of the V12 and the V16 cars. And so you will find this ornament today where you won't find this one. This has the greater value.
The rarity.
The rarity factor.
Considering how rare this Mascot is, Jim, how did you come to acquire this?
As a longtime Mascot collector, I have made friends around the world. And through this network of friends, I have become aware of the ownership of a number of very rare Mascots, this being one of them. Rare Mascots are usually traded or passed from one to another, not because of monetary value so much as personal interest. So in this case, I came up with something, a Mascot of my collection, which was of more interest to the owner of this Mascot. And we did a trade.
Which brings me to ask about the collector and his collection. You know, like you say, someone wanted something you had and you wanted something someone else had. So was this a straightaway trade?
Yes, it would be a trade based on interest rather than monetary value. In other words, equal interest brings about the trade. If the interest were not to be equal, then of course, thanks but no thanks.
Some of Jim's ornaments are very whimsical and nostalgic, and they all hold different meanings to him. Now, Jim, I can't imagine what the history is behind this ornament. Can you explain it to me?
Well, this is an ornament that goes by the name of Old Doc Yak, designed by Sidney Smith at the time he joined the Chicago Tribune. The Mascot itself is relatively rare, and particularly rare in this condition. Everybody wonders what this little number on the back is all about. 348. That was the number to Sidney Smith's automobile.
This is a very heavy ornament, and it looks like there's a bullet hole in the side of the helmet. Can you explain that to us?
Well, Joey, this is a Mascot that was used on fire engines or fire trucks of the Paris Fire Department, and no doubt saw service in the First World War. And this indeed is considered to be the mark of a bullet that had struck this particular Mascot. Now I'm going to show you a Mascot that some of you may recognize. Still used today, the Michelin Man, or Babindum, used by the Michelin Tire Company, has been a time-honored mascot for many, many years. And this is the original Babindum Man, designed to represent a stack of tires. A very sought-after automotive mascot.
Can you show us one of your favorites, Jim?
Well, certainly, Joey, certainly this mascot is amongst my favorites. It's the Archer for the Pierce Arrow Company. Back in 1929, the Pierce Arrow Company decided they wanted a fairly elegant mascot for their car, and so they commissioned Mascot to be made by the Turnstead Company, a company of General Motors, even though Pierce Arrow was a separate company unto itself. Under the direction of William Schnell, working at Turnstead, Bonnie Lem designed this mascot. She herself had worked under Rodin in Paris, and you can see the similarity in the design to a Rodin sculpture. This is really a very, very classic and a very wonderful example of the very best of American mascots.
Jim has shown us several ornaments that go on cars, but do you have any that go onto trucks, Jim?
Yes, I do. I have a very rare mascot for the Dancer truck, a truck from 1925 to 30, an American truck. Hard to believe that something as ornate as this was just intended for truck use. The Dancer truck.
So what is it that really gets a collector excited, Jim?
Well, different collectors will be excited for different reasons, but there are a few iconic mascots that every collector would want to acquire, and this is one of them. This is a mascot that was designed for the Cadillac car. It was the first figural mascot used by Cadillac in 1926. It's called the Herald. That is the proper name for the mascot. Some people refer to it as the Tutor. And it is a mascot that I think any mascot collector would be quite excited to find and have the opportunity to purchase.
And how did you come about acquiring this?
Oh, I got this one many, many years ago, bought it from another collector, and simply bought it for so many dollars at that time.
It looks very similar to this one here.
Yes, it looks very similar indeed, doesn't it? And this is where the real excitement came for me. I knew all about this mascot, of course, and I knew all about the design. Knowledge is power, and so when you do have the knowledge that I had already acquired on this mascot, the excitement that a mascot like this would provide, then on eBay, this showed up. It was advertised on eBay as being this mascot, but my eye could tell me that this was not exactly the same thing. I didn't know what this was. I really didn't. But I knew it had to be something of great significance because of the similarity in design. And so I bought it. After purchasing it, I researched it and found this, and it is marked to have been made by Hans Brassler. Hans Brassler was a very, very famous man who worked in America in the early teens. He ran his own company up until 1919, and then he joined Tiffany. This mascot, because it is marked Hans Brassler, dates it to 1919 or earlier. This is 1926, this is 1919. This had to be a prototype for the inspiration for this Mascot. There's just no other way about it. And so to have found something like this and to be able to make this type of connection is just about as exciting as you can get. The Cadillac Crest itself was produced in 1906, and so it goes back quite a long way. And it in itself is a tremendously interesting thing. It started off with white swans, and then the white swans turned black, and then the black swans became merlets, and then the merlets became ducks. And so these are black swans, and being black swans dates it to 1919. So you can date it not only with the Hans Brassler name, but with the character of the swans on the crest. These are merlets, 1926. Do you see the difference? Like little ducks, and these are little swans. It's a lot to know. That's what makes the hobby fun. I mean, it's like collecting stamps, eh?
We hope you've enjoyed today's show, but we've only scratched the surface of Jim's collection. Jim has published 8 books on the topic.
These are 3 of them, Joey. The collection has been photographed by Bruce Stewart to bring out the artistic merit of the Mascots that are in my collection. I think you will agree that the pictures themselves give a very, very good introduction to the whole topic of automotive mascot collecting. And so I would highly recommend, of course I would recommend my books, but I would recommend any of the books that have been published by various authors that give the information necessary for a potential collector to catch fire and realize how much interest really lies in these wonderful small works of art. And I would love to hear from anyone who would like to be an automotive mascot collector.
If you'd like to know more about vintage cars, or if you have a vintage car you would like us to take a look at, you can contact me by email, joey@vintagecarsvictoria.com. Bye for now.